In the cold void between the stars, the galaxy's ancient powers had long dismissed humanity as inconsequential, a species barely capable of coherent organization, barely able to venture beyond its own solar system without relying on the aid of alien technologies or foreign trade networks. And yet on Earth, humans are already planning far beyond the expectations of the cosmos. Their scientists working feverishly in orbital laboratories, their engineers designing spacecraft that combined resilience, speed, and adaptability in ways that even the most arrogant galactic observers could not have imagined. Captain Jonathan Harris stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned heavy cruiser Independence, staring at the display of incoming alien reconnaissance drones, their sleek forms glinting in the distant starlight as they orbited silently above Mars, unaware that their very presence was about to trigger the first overt step in humanity's long-awaited demonstration of strategic brilliance. Admiral Elena Torres, seated beside him, kept her eyes on the communication console where encrypted messages from Earth Command poured in, detailing the latest breakthroughs in fusion propulsion, electromagnetic shielding, and adaptive AI combat systems, each a silent testament to humanity's tireless ingenuity. While across the galaxy, the Council Falcar, a coalition of 3 dominant species, met in their opulent chamber suspended above a neutron star, laughing amongst themselves at reports of human expansion. Convinced that the small, resource-limited planet posed no threat whatsoever, the Falcar Chancellor Valen leaned back in his crystalline throne, swirling an iridescent liquid as he remarked with amused disdain that humans were mere scavengers of the stars, incapable of maintaining a fleet capable of even minor skirmishes. Their diplomats had been tolerated, their scientists observed as curiosities, and their militaries noted as laughable relics of a long-dead era of primitive warfare, unaware that every derisive assessment only fueled the humans' relentless drive to prove their worth. Thousands of light-years away, engineers like Sarah Bennett and Raji Malhotra were monitoring simulations of interstellar conflict in real time, testing scenarios in which humans faced overwhelming odds, their minds calculating trajectories, shield harmonics, and automated drone deployment strategies with precision that no alien tactician had yet achieved. Back aboard Independence, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, weapon systems cycling through diagnostic checks, navigation arrays calibrating for faster-than-light maneuvers, and life support systems monitored for minute fluctuations in the harsh environment of deep space, all while civilian scientists were embedded on the vessel, ready to deploy experimental technologies that could turn a hopeless engagement into a decisive victory. The first probe entered orbit around the outer rim. Colony of Xylar Prime, transmitting data back to Earth about the alien installation's energy grid, patrol patterns, and defensive perimeters, every byte of information parsed by quantum algorithms running aboard Independence, then cross-reference against historical intelligence of similar structures throughout the galaxy. The aliens on Xylar Prime remained blissfully unaware, going about their routines with an air of arrogance, confident that humanity's reach had not yet extended into their sector. Yet in every laboratory, on every command deck, and in every simulation chamber across human-controlled space, the seeds of retribution had been sown meticulously, patiently, and with the cold calculation of a species that had learned to endure, adapt, and strike with efficiency born of both necessity and a deep-seated resolve to assert itself upon a universe that had ignored it for far too long. As the first human frigate slipped silently through the asteroid belt surrounding Xylar Prime, it carried with it a payload of cloaked drones capable of infiltrating every key facility, their sensors feeding back environmental readings, defensive layouts, and communications intercepts, allowing the Independence to chart a precise map of the alien defenses. The human crew, each trained not only in combat but in improvisation, decision-making under pressure, and interspecies negotiation tactics, anticipated every possible move of their adversaries, while the aliens continued their casual monitoring, confident that any human action would be too slow, too uncoordinated, too primitive to threaten their installations. Yet even as they sipped their ceremonial beverages and mocked humanity in their reports to the Council, on Earth, the Global Command Network, integrating military, scientific, and intelligence agencies, had begun the final coordination of a strike plan that would showcase the lethal combination of human ingenuity, adaptability, and unbreakable resolve. Simultaneously, in the remote deserts of Nevada, a team of engineers tested a new quantum entanglement communication array designed to provide instant data transfer across light years, ensuring that even the fastest alien responses could be anticipated and countered. The resulting simulations predicted human victory in scenarios where conventional logic would have deemed impossible. Across the galaxy, humans were dismissed, underestimated, and overlooked, yet in every overlooked corridor of power, in every place where humans were assumed to be irrelevant, they quietly prepared to prove that resilience, creativity, and an unyielding will were forces the cosmos had never fully reckoned with, and as independence positioned itself for first tactical maneuver, with cloaked drones deployed, sensors active, and every human on board aware of the stakes, the message from Earth Command was clear, succinct, and unwavering. The galaxy had ignored humanity for too long, and now humanity would ensure that no corner would ever do so again. And with that unspoken agreement among the crew, the first real human strike against a complacent galaxy began, silent, precise, and unstoppable. A prelude to the revelation that the species they had dismissed as primitive would soon demonstrate that human ingenuity, adaptability, and determination were forces that even the most powerful alien civilizations could not contain. And as the alien patrols continued their routine sweeps, they could not perceive the storm of strategy, innovation, and resolve that was unfolding in their midst, because humans had learned that patience and preparation were as lethal as any weapon, and that the first move in a war the galaxy had not yet acknowledged could decide the course of centuries, as every crew member, scientist, and strategist held their breath, aware that the coming hours would forever change the perception of humanity across the stars, that the overlooked species would reveal the hidden brilliance, courage, and tactical mastery that had been simmering beneath the surface for centuries, and that when the final moves were made, the galaxy would realize, too late, that they had mistaken humanity's patience for weakness, its curiosity for naivety, and its survival instinct for irrelevance. And in that realization, the seeds of awe, fear, and respect would take root, signaling the beginning of a new era in which humanity, once overlooked, would strike with precision, intelligence, and unrelenting force, showing the universe that it had been wrong to dismiss the small blue planet as inconsequential, that its people were not merely survivors of their own turbulent world, but masters of their destiny, capable of reshaping the balance of power across light years, as the first flickers of human initiative began to ripple through the alien ranks, leaving them unprepared, bewildered, and slowly realizing that the underestimated humans had finally decided to assert themselves, and the galaxy, vast as it was, would never again overlook them. As the Independence continued its silent approach toward the outer rim colonies, the human crew coordinated with orbital stations around Earth, Mars, and Titan, linking millions of calculations, sensor feeds, and tactical simulations into a single coherent operational plan, their AI systems predicting alien responses with uncanny accuracy, while Captain Jonathan Harris oversaw every step, ensuring that each maneuver aligned with both the immediate objective and the broader strategy that had been developed over decades of preparation. Admiral Elena Torres directed communications between forward-deployed human fleets and covert operative teams, whose assignments included infiltrating alien research facilities, sabotaging energy nodes, and planning adaptive surveillance devices capable of analyzing alien combat protocols in real time. And in the laboratories of Luna Prime, Dr. Sarah Bennett and her team calibrated a new series of nanite-based countermeasures, each programmed to disrupt the alien shield harmonics and electronic warfare systems, ensuring that when the first engagement occurred, human ships would exploit weaknesses undetectable to alien eyes. Thousands of kilometers away, reconnaissance drones moved through asteroid fields and debris clouds, mapping every possible approach path to the colony's orbital defenses, transmitting the information back to the Independence and the command network, while the Thalkar Council, oblivious of the humans' meticulous preparation, continued their deliberations in ornate chambers filled with flowing crystalline architecture, their advisors confidently asserting that Earth's militaries were incapable of mounting an effective offensive, their arrogance magnified by centuries of unchallenged dominance. Yet every miscalculation, every underestimation, every casual dismissal only fueled the humans' drive to execute the plan with flawless precision. On Earth, the President and the Global Defense Council reviewed simulations that projected outcomes across multiple timelines, adjusting strategies for every conceivable alien response, while engineers worked to synchronize human ships across light years, utilizing quantum entangled communication arrays that allowed instantaneous coordination, ensuring that when the moment of action arrived, no element would be out of place, no maneuver delayed, no response unanticipated. As the first human frigate slipped through the outer defenses of Xylar Prime, cloaked in adaptive stealth fields, drones infiltrated the colony's central hubs, quietly transmitting structural weaknesses, energy flow patterns, and patrol schedules, every movement calculated to minimize detection, maximize efficiency, and maintain the element of surprise. The aliens, confident in their superiority, failed to notice these initial incursions, their sensors calibrated to detect large-scale threats, not the small, coordinated waves of human infiltration that moved like shadows across the colony. And aboard Independence, Captain Harris monitored the feeds, issuing real-time commands to adjust deployment, divert patrols, and manipulate alien perception, while Admiral Torres coordinated a broader human network, rerouting reinforcements and allocating resources to ensure that when the decisive moment arrived, humans would strike with overwhelming force. Thousands of scientists across the solar system were simultaneously running simulations of alien behavior, stress testing, tactical options, analyzing the potential for counterattacks, and refining electronic warfare programs designed to overload alien command and control systems. Every human team member understood the stakes, the risks, and the critical importance of precise execution, yet morale remained high, their shared purpose binding them together across vast distances. While the Thalkar Council remained blissfully unaware that each of their assumptions about human weakness had been carefully anticipated and countered, that every overconfidence, every smug dismissal, and every internal squabble had been incorporated into human plans to ensure a rapid and decisive collapse of the alien defenses once action began. As forward teams moved deeper into the orbital stations, bypassing security protocols with adaptive hacking systems, planning devices that would later disable energy grids, redirect automated defenses, and create controlled chaos, the first engagement was unfolding not in the open. Confrontation the aliens expected, but in the shadows, in the systems they considered insignificant, a prelude to a wider human offensive that would exploit every weakness and oversight, and as drones completed their infiltration, transmitting final confirmation of vulnerability points, Captain Harris prepared the Independence to initiate coordinated strikes, weapon systems powered, targeting arrays locked, and human crews across the network ready to respond to any unforeseen developments, while the Thalkar, confident in their immunity to human intervention, continued ceremonial debates about resource allocation, unaware that the humans had turned every perceived weakness into an advantage, every underestimated capability into a strategic weapon, and that when the first salvo of human-controlled orbital disruptors and drone-launched munitions hit the colony's power grids, the galaxy would witness, for the first time, that humanity, once overlooked, was now in complete control of the battlefield, their ingenuity, patience, and relentless preparation, ensuring that alien forces would struggle to comprehend, let alone counter, the sudden precision and adaptability of the human strike, and as the first sparks of chaos ignited within Xylar Prime, signaling the beginning of a human offensive, it became clear that the species long dismissed as inconsequential had executed the opening phase of the campaign that would forever redefine the balance of power in the galaxy, showing that meticulous planning, advanced technology, and unyielding human determination could turn even the most improbable victory into reality, and that every alien who had mocked, ignored, or dismissed humanity would soon understand, painfully, that the overlooked species had finally struck, and that the consequences of that strike would resonate across light years for generations to come. The first signs of panic rippled through Xylar Prime when entire defense sectors went dark within seconds of each other, alien technicians staring in disbelief at their consoles as energy readings flatlined and automated turrets powered down without warning, their command staff initially assuming a system malfunction rather than an attack, because the idea that humans could penetrate their defenses so thoroughly had never been taken seriously, and as confusion spread, the Independence executed the next phase of the plan, releasing a wave of electronic warfare pulses tuned precisely to alien communication frequencies, scrambling command signals, delaying responses, and isolating individual outposts from one another, while Captain Jonathan Harris remained calm on the bridge, issuing measured instructions as if overseeing a routine exercise, his confidence rooted in years of preparation and the quiet certainty that every contingency had been anticipated. Admiral Elena Torres coordinated. With human fleet elements emerging from hidden positions across the sector, their ships appearing seemingly from nowhere as stealth fields disengaged in perfect synchronization. A calculated psychological maneuver designed to shock the alien defenders and force them into reactive postures. On Xylar Prime, alien commanders argued among themselves, some insisting on immediate retaliation, others demanding verification from the Council. Precious minutes lost as human drones disabled secondary power relays and hijacked sensor arrays, feeding false data into alien systems that showed empty space where human ships now advanced steadily. Human Marines aboard boarding craft checked weapons and exosuits, their movement efficient and disciplined, aware that the coming engagements would test not only their equipment but their resolve. Yet none hesitated, because every one of them understood that this moment represented the culmination of generations of restraint, compromise, and quiet. Endurance in the face of galactic dismissal. On Earth, global broadcasts were tightly restricted, but command centers hummed with activity as analysts confirmed that alien responses matched predicted patterns almost perfectly, validating the strategic models that had been refined over decades. Dr. Sarah Bennett watched the live data streams with focused intensity, adjusting nanite swarm parameters to counter unexpected fluctuations in alien shield frequencies, her team working in seamless coordination as if guided by a single mind, while Raji Malhotra recalculated trajectory windows for kinetic strikes designed to disable orbital infrastructure without catastrophic loss of life, a deliberate choice meant to demonstrate not only human power, but controlled restraint across the colony. Alien civilians sensed that something was wrong as gravity fluctuations rippled through transit corridors and emergency lighting flickered to life, the illusion of invulnerability shattered by the realization that an unseen enemy had already taken control of critical systems. The first human boarding teams breached an outer station with minimal resistance, encountering defenders who were disoriented, their command links severed, their automated defenses unresponsive, and as humans secured control nodes and data cores, they transmitted everything back to the Independence, where analysts immediately began extracting strategic intelligence on alien fleet movements, industrial capacity, and political hierarchies, information that would shape future operations far beyond this initial strike. Meanwhile, the Falcar Council finally received fragmented reports of the situation, their confidence faltering as advisors struggled to reconcile the scale of the disruption with their long-held assumptions about human limitations. Chancellor Valen demanded clarity, his voice sharp with irritation rather than fear, still convinced that the situation could be contained. Yet even as emergency measures were authorized, human strike groups targeted relay stations linking the colony to the wider alien network, effectively isolating Xylar Prime and preventing any coordinated response from neighboring systems. The precision of the human assault began to sink in, not as raw destruction, but as a methodical dismantling of alien control, one system at a time, one assumption after another, aboard the Independence. Captain Harris watched as resistance collapsed faster than anticipated. Not because the aliens lacked courage, but because their doctrines were rigid, their strategies built on centuries of uncontested dominance that had never required adaptation, while human tactics thrived on flexibility, improvisation, and decentralized decision-making. Every unit empowered to act independently if cut off from command, turning isolation into an advantage rather than a liability. As the first alien cruiser attempted to break through the human blockade, it found its targeting systems compromised, its shields destabilized by harmonics it could not compensate for, and with a single coordinated salvo of precision fire, the vessel was disabled rather than destroyed, drifting powerless as human ships moved past it toward more critical objectives. The message was deliberate and unmistakable. Humanity was not lashing out blindly. It was demonstrating control, capability, and the ability to neutralize superior forces without resorting to indiscriminate destruction. And as this realization spread through the alien ranks, fear began to replace arrogance, commanders hesitating, orders delayed, morale fracturing under the weight of an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move, while across human-controlled space, quiet acknowledgments passed between leaders, officers, and civilians alike, the understanding that the galaxy was finally seeing humanity not as a footnote or a curiosity, but as a strategic power capable of reshaping the balance of the stars, and as Xylar Prime fell firmly under human operational control, the opening phase of the conflict reached its conclusion, setting the stage for a far larger reckoning, one that would force the entire galaxy to confront the consequences of overlooking a species that had learned, patiently and relentlessly, how to strike with intelligence, precision, and overwhelming intent. As control of Xylar Prime stabilized under human oversight, the true scope of the operation began to unfold across the wider sector, human analysts parsing the captured data streams and uncovering layers of alien infrastructure that revealed how deeply the Thalkar Coalition had embedded its influence throughout neighboring systems, trade routes, and military staging grounds. And aboard the Independence, Captain Jonathan Harris convened a secure briefing with senior officers and civilian advisors. Their discussion focused not on celebration, but on the next inevitable escalation, because every human present understood that the galaxy would not tolerate this disruption without attempting retaliation. Admiral Elena Torres relayed intelligence from long-range sensors indicating rapid fleet mobilizations from multiple alien-controlled regions, their movements chaotic and poorly coordinated, confirming that the sudden loss of Xylar Prime had fractured the illusion of absolute control the Thalkar had relied upon for centuries on Earth. The Global Defense Council authorized the expansion of Operation Quiet Dawn, activating reserve fleets and forward supply nodes that had been hidden within asteroid clusters, gas giant rings, and deep space waypoints. Assets that the aliens had never bothered to catalog because they had assumed humans lacked the foresight or industrial capacity to sustain prolonged interstellar operations. Engineers rerouted production lines to prioritize modular ship components and autonomous repair platforms, ensuring that human forces could adapt rapidly to changing battlefield conditions, while Dr. Sarah Bennett's team refined the nanite countermeasures using real combat data, enhancing their effectiveness against a broader range of alien technologies. Across the captured colony, human liaison officers interacted cautiously with alien civilians, securing essential services and preventing panic, a deliberate demonstration that humanity's objective was control and stability rather than indiscriminate conquest, a nuance that further destabilized alien propaganda efforts which had portrayed humans as reckless primitives. Meanwhile, intercepted alien communications revealed growing dissent within the coalition itself, junior commanders questioning outdated doctrines, logistics officers warning of supply chain vulnerabilities, and political envoys expressing concern that provoking humanity further could lead to catastrophic losses. Yet the Thalkar Council, reeling from humiliation, issued a declaration framing the loss of Xylar Prime as an isolated incident, ordering a decisive counteroffensive to restore authority and crush what they still referred to as a human anomaly, unaware that every order they transmitted was being analyzed, anticipated, and countered by human strategic systems. As the first wave of alien reinforcements entered the sector, they encountered human picket groups employing asymmetric tactics. Small, fast-moving vessels harassing supply lines, disabling escorts, and vanishing before a coherent response could be mounted, forcing alien admirals to divert resources away from the main advance, compounding confusion and delay. Aboard the Independence, Captain Harris approved targeted strikes against key logistical hubs rather than frontline warships, a choice rooted in human military history that emphasized attrition of support networks over direct confrontation. And the results were immediate. Alien fleets found themselves short on fuel, spare components, and reliable communications, their numerical superiority rendered meaningless by their inability to sustain coordinated operations. Human Marines conducted rapid boarding actions against isolated alien vessels, capturing crews and intelligence without excessive force. Each engagement reinforcing perception that humans were always several steps ahead, adapting faster than alien command structures could respond. On Earth, restricted briefings informed political leaders and allied systems that humanity had crossed a threshold, no longer reacting to galactic pressure but actively shaping events. And while public acknowledgement remained limited, a quiet resolve spread through human society. The understanding that the era being overlooked had ended, that the galaxy's attention, once dismissive, was now focused with growing apprehension, as reports reached the Thalkar Council of failed counterattacks and mounting losses. Chancellor Valen's tone shifted from irritation to barely concealed anxiety. Emergency sessions convened amid rising accusations and internal power struggles. their unity eroding under the strain of an enemy that refused to behave according to established patterns. And as human fleets continued their methodical advance, not in reckless charges, but in deliberate, calculated movements, it became clear that this conflict was not a single battle, but a systemic unraveling of alien dominance. Each captured node, disrupted route, and neutralized fleet compounding the realization that humanity had not merely struck back in anger, but had embarked on a sustained campaign to redefine its place in the galaxy, one that leveraged patience, adaptability, and strategic insight honed through centuries of survival on a harsh and unforgiving world. And as the first alien emissaries tentatively reached out through back channels seeking clarification, restraint, or negotiation, human command acknowledged their messages without response, choosing silence as a weapon, allowing uncertainty to fester, fear to grow, and the full weight of humanity's emergence to settle over a galaxy that was only beginning to understand the consequences of having overlooked Earth for so long. The silence from human command unsettled the alien leadership more than any direct threat could have, because uncertainty gnawed at their rigid hierarchies, and as scattered alien fleets struggled to regroup, humanity pressed its advantage with deliberate restraint, expanding control zones rather than pursuing annihilation, forcing alien commanders to choose between defending strategic assets or protecting political centers, a dilemma they were ill-equipped to solve aboard the Independence. Captain Jonathan Harris reviewed updated projections showing cascading failures across coalition supply chains, the result of human strikes that targeted repair yards, refueling depots, and data synchronization relays rather than heavily armed warships. And Admiral Elena Torres confirmed that several alien systems had already begun rationing energy and materials, a sign that panic was spreading faster than official communications could suppress it. On Earth, global coordination reached levels never before achieved, civilian industries adapting overnight to military requirements, shipping conglomerates retooling logistics algorithms for interstellar deployment, and universities converting entire research divisions into problem-solving hubs dedicated to real-time battlefield innovation. Dr. Sarah Bennett's nanite platforms evolved rapidly, learning from each engagement and rewriting their own operational parameters, making every subsequent deployment more efficient than the last. While Rajiv Malhotra's kinetic strike models were refined and delivered disabling blows with surgical precision, reinforcing the human doctrine that power was most effective when it was controlled. Within alien territories, governors and administrators faced unrest as civilians questioned the promises of protection they had been given for generations. Propaganda broadcasts grew more aggressive yet less convincing, and internal security forces were stretched thin attempting to suppress dissent. Sparked by the realization that the supposedly inferior humans had seized the initiative with frightening competence, intercepted transmissions revealed heated arguments among alien admirals, some advocating withdrawal and negotiation, others demanding total war to preserve honor and authority, but every option carried risks they had never been trained to assess. Because none accounted for an adversary that learned faster than it fought, human forward units established temporary command hubs inside reclaimed systems, coordinating with local populations to stabilize infrastructure and prevent humanitarian collapse, a choice that further complicated alien efforts to paint humanity as conquerors, while human Marines rotated through operations with disciplined efficiency. Their morale strengthened not by bloodlust, but by the clarity of purpose and the knowledge that their actions were reshaping the future balance of the galaxy, as alien attempt at counterintelligence repeatedly failed. Thwarted by adaptive encryption and decentralized command structures, frustration turned inward within the coalition, political factions accusing one another of negligence, arrogance, and strategic blindness. And when a coalition strike group finally managed to engage a human task force near a binary star system, the encounter unfolded exactly as human simulations had predicted, alien vessels committing fully to an aggressive advance only to find their targeting disrupted, formations fragmented, and flanks exposed by coordinated feints, resulting in a decisive engagement that ended with multiple alien ships disabled and none of the human vessels lost. The aftermath of that battle echoed through alien space, shattering the last remnants of the myth that humanity's successes were isolated or accidental. Aboard the Independence, Captain Harris authorized the release of carefully curated battle data through neutral channels, ensuring that the wider galaxy would see the truth unfiltered, that humans were not relying on brute force alone, but on superior planning, adaptability, and an understanding of systemic warfare. The response was immediate. Independent systems began reassessing their alliances. Trade delegations quietly suspended coalition agreements, and observers who had once dismissed humanity now scrambled to understand the principles behind its rapid rise. As reports reached Earth that several alien worlds had begun fortifying against coalition retaliation rather than human advance, it became evident that the conflict was evolving beyond a simple confrontation into a realignment of galactic power. And within the halls of the Falcar Council, desperation set in as Chancellor Valen convened emergency sessions marked by shouting, accusations, and fractured authority. The realization dawning too late that by overlooking humanity, by mocking its caution and patience, they had allowed a species forged by adversity to prepare unchallenged and as human fleets held their positions, ready but unprovoked. The galaxy found itself suspended in a tense pause, aware that the next move would determine not just the outcome of a war, but the rules by which interstellar power would be measured for generations. And in that pause, the overlooked species stood unshaken, confident not because it sought domination, but because it had proven to itself and to the stars that it would never again be ignored. The pause did not last, because fear and wounded pride drove the Falcar Council toward a decision that revealed just how deeply they had misunderstood humanity. And when Chancellor Valen authorized a full-scale punitive strike aimed not at 4 human fleets, but at Earth itself, believing that a direct blow to the human homeworld would shatter morale and force capitulation, the order exposed the coalition's greatest weakness: its inability to grasp the depth of human contingency planning. As long-range sensors across the solar system detected anomalous mass shadows emerging from hyperspace corridors far earlier than alien strategists had anticipated, triggering layered defense protocols that had been quietly refined for decades, orbital platforms around Earth, Luna, and Mars activated in seamless succession, their weapons arrays synchronized through quantum-link command nodes that eliminated latency and centralized vulnerabilities, while planetary shields adjusted dynamically, redistributing energy in response to predicted impact vectors rather than confirmed strikes, a concept alien tacticians had dismissed as inefficient. On Earth, emergency alerts were brief and calm, the population already conditioned through years of preparedness drills, shelters activated, infrastructure hardened, and civilian networks rerouted without panic, as humanity demonstrated that survival under threat was not a new experience, but a cultural constant aboard the Independence. Captain Jonathan Harris watched the unfolding defense with measured focus, coordinating forward fleets to intercept alien task forces at choke points that human astronomers had mapped centuries earlier. Gravitational wells and radiation belts turned into weapons through precise maneuvering. Alien ships forced into predictable paths where human interceptors waited, while Dr. Sarah Bennett's nanite systems were deployed defensively on an unprecedented scale, reinforcing shields, repairing microfractures in hulls, and even disrupting alien weapon cohesion mid-flight, a technological flexibility that stunned coalition commanders as their initial salvos lost coherence before reaching their targets. Alien admirals attempted to adapt, ordering saturation bombardments and reckless advances, but every shift in tactic was met with an immediate human counter, decentralized units making independent decisions based on shared situational awareness rather than rigid command hierarchies, turning chaos into coordinated resistance. As the first alien capital ship entered Earth's defensive envelope, its shields flared and collapsed under harmonics it could not compensate for, not from overwhelming firepower, but from carefully modulated interference that exploited undocumented resonances. The vessel crippled and captured rather than destroyed, its crew taken alive. The symbolism unmistakable. Humanity was not merely defending its home. It was demonstrating absolute control over the engagement across the solar system. Similar scenes unfolded, alien formations fragmented, retreat paths cut off, supply vessels disabled, and command ships isolated, the punitive strike dissolving into a cascading failure that left the coalition's most powerful fleet scattered and demoralized. Within the Falcar Council chambers, panic finally replaced arrogance. Emergency transmissions flooded in describing losses that defied every predictive model they possessed. Advisors stammered explanations. None sufficient. As the reality settled that humanity had anticipated an attack on its homeworld from the very beginning, not as a possibility, but as an inevitability, and had built its defenses accordingly. When the last alien task force retreated beyond the solar boundary, leaving behind captured vessels and silent wrecks. Earth remained intact, its defenses unbreached, its people resolute, and the galaxy was forced to confront a truth that could no longer be denied, that humanity's greatest strength was not any single weapon or technology, but its ability to endure threat, adapt under pressure, and transform survival into strategic mastery. And as human fleets held their positions without pursuit, allowing the defeated forces to withdraw, the message carried across the stars was unmistakable. The overlooked species had not only struck back, it had absorbed the full weight of galactic aggression and emerged stronger, more unified, and utterly unbroken, setting the stage for a final reckoning that would determine whether the galaxy would learn to coexist with humanity or continue to underestimate a species that had proven it could defend its home, its people, and its future against powers that once believed themselves untouchable. In the aftermath of the failed strike on Earth, the galaxy entered a state of uneasy recalibration because the illusion of coalition invincibility had been shattered not at the fringes, but at the very heart of human space, and as alien fleets limped back to their territories carrying stories of impossible coordination, adapted defenses, and an enemy that seemed to predict intent before action, independent systems and minor powers began to reassess everything they thought they understood about interstellar hierarchy aboard the Independence. Captain Jonathan Harris received intelligence updates confirming that several coalition member worlds had suspended military contributions, their leaders unwilling to sacrifice more ships and lives for a council that had led them into humiliation. Admiral Elena Torres oversaw diplomatic channels that had once been silent now lighting up with cautious inquiries, requests for clarification, and indirect offers of neutrality, while human. Command maintained a firm but measured stance, responding only with acknowledgments and conditions, reinforcing perception that humanity was not desperate for validation, but fully aware of its leverage. On Earth, global leadership authorized the next phase of engagement, not a sweeping invasion, but a controlled advance designed to dismantle the coalition's ability to project force without collapsing civilian governance, a strategy rooted in human history, where lasting victories were achieved through systemic change rather than total destruction. Dr. Sarah Bennett's teams deployed stabilization nanites to captured systems, restoring power grids and life support infrastructure faster than coalition administrators ever had, creating an uncomfortable contrast that alien civilians could not ignore as human engineers and liaison officers worked openly and efficiently. Rumors spread through alien populations that humans were not the monsters they had been warned about, but disciplined, pragmatic, and disturbingly competent. Within coalition space, propaganda faltered as reality contradicted every broadcast, and internal security forces found themselves overwhelmed not by rebellion, but by questions they could no longer answer. Meanwhile, human fleets executed precision operations against coalition command centers, not annihilating them, but severing their ability to coordinate, isolating leadership from the forces they claimed to control. Chancellor Valen convened yet another emergency session, his authority eroded, his words met with skepticism and thinly veiled contempt, as evidence mounted that his decision to strike Earth had not only failed but unified humanity and accelerated the coalition's fragmentation. Intercepted transmissions revealed that several senior alien commanders had begun negotiating surrender terms independently, unwilling to be sacrificed for pride. And as these developments unfolded, Captain Harris authorized a release of a single, carefully worded human communique transmitted across open galactic channels, stating plainly that humanity sought neither domination nor extermination, but would no longer tolerate dismissal, coercion, or unprovoked aggression. The message was devoid of threats, yet its restraint carried more weight than any ultimatum, because it was backed by demonstrated capability. Across the galaxy, reactions varied from relief to fear to reluctant respect, and in systems far removed from the conflict, historians, strategists, and political theorists began documenting what they called a human inflection point, the moment when a species long considered marginal redefined the metrics of power, not through conquest alone but through adaptability, unity, and an unflinching willingness to prepare for the worst. As coalition fleets continued to stand down or defect, the path toward final resolution narrowed, and it became clear that only one decisive act remained, the confrontation not of weapons, but of legitimacy, where the coalition would either acknowledge humanity as a peer or collapse under the weight of its own miscalculations. And as the Independents set course toward the Coalition's core systems under full sense of visibility rather than stealth, humanity made its intent unmistakable, no longer striking from the shadows, but advancing openly, confident that the galaxy was finally watching, listening, and beginning to understand that the age of overlooking humans had ended forever. The approach of human fleets toward the Coalition core systems unfolded without deception or concealment, because humanity no longer needed surprise, and as sensors across the galaxy tracked a steady advance, the symbolism was unmistakable. A species once dismissed as irrelevant now moved with the confidence of one that understood both its strength and its limits within the Coalition capital. Panic gave way to resignation as fragmented leadership struggled to assemble a response. Chancellor Valen's final address to the Council was marked not by authority, but by exhaustion. His earlier arrogance replaced by the dawning realization that the structures he represented had been hollow long before humanity exposed them. When human envoys arrived under full escort rather than with hidden fleets, their message was delivered plainly, without ceremony or threats, stating that the conflict would end not through annihilation, but through recognition. The Coalition would dissolve its coercive authority, dismantle its expansion fleets, and acknowledge humanity as a sovereign equal with full standing in galactic affairs, or face continued systematic isolation that would render its remaining power meaningless. The weight of that choice settled heavily over the chamber, because everyone present understood that the humans did not need to destroy them to win. They had already demonstrated control over the systems that sustained the Coalition's dominance after a brief and bitter debate. The vote passed, not unanimously, but decisively, the Coalition formally conceding authority and issuing a declaration that marked the end of an era defined by complacency and unchecked superiority across human-controlled space. The acknowledgement was met not with celebration, but with quiet resolve. Leaders emphasizing restraint, vigilance, and responsibility, aware that power once gained must be carefully managed, as human fleets withdrew from forward positions and transitioned into peacekeeping roles, stabilizing trade routes and safeguarding neutral systems. The galaxy began to adapt to new reality, one where humanity was neither conqueror nor subject, but a central force whose actions set standards others were compelled to follow. Alien worlds that had once dismissed Earth now sought exchange, cooperation, and understanding, their ambassadors approaching with a mix of caution and respect. Historians recorded the conflict not as a sudden uprising, but as the inevitable result of centuries of underestimation, of ignoring a species that had learned to survive by planning ahead, working together, and turning adversity into strength. Captain Jonathan Harris stood once more on the bridge of the Independence, watching stars drift past as the ship returned to patrol, not as a symbol of conquest, but a presence. Admiral Elena Torres coordinated the transition from wartime command to long-term strategic balance. And on Earth, life continued, ordinary yet changed, because humanity now knew that it would never again be overlooked, never again dismissed as insignificant, and never again wait silently while others decided its fate. The galaxy had learned at great cost that humans did not need a shout to be heard. They only needed time, preparation, and will to act, and in that lesson, etched across star systems and generations, the universe finally understood that the species it had ignored had not been weak. It had been waiting, and when humans struck, they did so not for glory, but to claim their rightful place among the stars, ensuring that from that moment forward, humanity would stand not as a forgotten footnote in galactic history, but as one of its defining authors.